Okay, let's dive into this. Have you ever found yourself just endlessly scrolling the internet, looking for something that actually, makes you stop and think about the big picture? Well, welcome to today's Explainer. We're unpacking a truly massive digital phenomenon today. We're looking at a web column called Life Chanyan, written by someone known as Shu Feng. And the whole hook here? It's exploring the origins of the universe and the mysteries of life, but it's doing it from this incredibly fascinating perspective that perfectly blends science with deep philosophy. It's not bothering with the small stuff, it is going straight for the biggest, most profound questions humanity has ever asked. Look at that number. Over 100 million hits. 100,174,381 to be exact. And we aren't talking about a viral dance trend or some pop culture gossip page here. No way. This is a massive collection of 4,318 written articles. The author basically kicks the whole thing off with a challenge to the reader, kind of asking, in the vastness of space cyber, shouldn't you focus your interest on something that's captivated tens of millions of minds? It instantly hooks you, right? Like, why are so many people drawn to these specific texts? What on earth is this column promising to reveal to us? To figure out why this is so insanely popular, we're going to follow the roadmap the author lays out. So first, we'll look at the origins of space and universe, then move into the composition and purpose of life, step into reincarnation and multidimensional space, bring it all back down to humanity's crisis and future, and finally wrap up with a pretty wild choice, seeking truth or money. All right, let's jump right into Section 1, Origins of Space and Universe, the macro view. So we're starting at the absolute macro level here. The source suggests that before we can even begin to figure out who we are, we've got to understand the massive canvas we're living on. The very first questions the author throws at us are just monumental. How did the universe come into being, and how enormous is it? By leading with these massive concepts, the column literally yanks you right out of your daily routine and drops you into a state of total cosmic wonder. We're not dealing with mundane day-to-day problems here. The text is promising clear, detailed answers about the actual physical boundaries and the absolute genesis of our entire reality. And this brilliantly illustrates the column's fusion of physics and existential curiosity. It transitions so seamlessly from the sheer size of the universe to the very fabric of reality itself, asking, what are time and space? But, it doesn't just stop at theoretical physics. It goes right there and asks if other lives populate the planets orbiting other stars. The author is casting a huge net here, really tapping into that innate, deeply human desire to know, are we alone in this staggering cosmic expanse? Moving right along to Section 2, Composition and Purpose of Life, the micro view. Okay, so once the text establishes this sheer, almost unfathomable scale of the universe, it sharply pivots inward. We're zooming all the way in from the cold expanse of space right down to biology and philosophy. The text asks, what is the composition of life? Which is a very scientific, biological question. But then it immediately pairs it with, what is the purpose of human life? And this is really where that integration of science and philosophy absolutely shines. The author is making the case that understanding what we are physically made of is inextricably tied to understanding why we are actually here. The column just keeps blurring these lines between empirical history and spiritual connectivity. It asks where humanity originated, which is fair enough, but then it throws in this deeply philosophical concept. What are predestined relationships? It's injecting a really cool layer of Eastern philosophy right into the middle of a biological inquiry. Like, are the people we meet every day just random collisions of atoms in this giant universe? Or is there some sort of cosmic, predestined fabric tying human relationships together? And get this, the author claims those 4,318 articles hold the exact answers. Now for Act 3, Section 3, Reincarnation and Multidimensional Space, the Metaphysical Realm. Now, what's really interesting here is how the text transitions from things we can physically observe, like stars, planets, and biology, into highly structured theoretical metaphysics. The author isn't just asking vague spiritual questions. Oh no, they introduce incredibly specific numerical frameworks. The text promises to explain exactly how 20 parallel worlds came into being. It asks if it's reasonable to accept the division of 36-dimensional spaces, and even proposes something called the 36 universal mazes. It's fascinating because it doesn't treat the metaphysical realm like some chaotic, unknowable mystery. Instead, it frames it as this highly organized, mathematically structured system that we, as readers, can actually decode and understand. Naturally, any exploration of life's deepest mysteries has to confront the ultimate unknown, right? Death. The column lays out the possibilities with stark clarity. It asks, will people transmigrate, meaning reincarnate, after their mortal death? Will they simply disappear forever, or will they just lie quietly in the ground awaiting resurrection? By impartially laying out these three very distinct outcomes, the author is directly addressing our deepest fears and hopes, and promising a definitive explanation to literally the oldest question in human history. To actually navigate all these dimensions and the afterlife, the source categorizes humanity into a very specific hierarchy of spiritual evolution. It asks what the differences are among ignorant people, deities, mortals, sages, and saints. This is huge because it implies a pathway for growth. It's suggesting that by engaging with this column and understanding these mysteries, you can actually elevate yourself from just being an ignorant person or a mortal and climb the ladder up toward becoming a sage or even a saint. So, what's the ultimate goal of all this spiritual evolution? Well, the author introduces these concepts of the fairyland and the pure land and asks if they're actually the same thing. But more importantly, it asks how one actually gets to enter this fairyland. The key, according to the text, seems to be all about understanding what constitutes supreme thinking. It's essentially a promise. Elevate your mind through the answers in this column, and you'll unlock access to these higher realms of existence. Which brings us to Section 4, Humanity's Crises and Future, the grounding reality. Now, if you're thinking this is all just floating in the clouds, it's not. The text suddenly gets very urgent and very grounded. The questions shift to the collective. What are the greatest crises that now face humanity, and how will we survive these great upcoming changes? It grounds the entire philosophical journey we just took. The author is basically flashing a giant warning sign, signaling that understanding the universe, parallel worlds, and supreme thinking isn't just some fun intellectual exercise. It is a mandatory survival tool for the looming, very tangible changes facing our world right now. Finally, Section 5, Seeking Truth or Money? The ultimate ultimatum. So, the crucial point is, after laying out all these literal, universe-shattering mysteries, the author leaves us with this incredible, stark juxtaposition. On one hand, you have this rare opportunity to explore the ultimate truths of the cosmos, figure out those 36 dimensions, prep for global crises, and seek out the fairyland. But on the other hand, you have the completely mundane, everyday reality of just ignoring all of that so you can go to work, pay the bills, and earn money. The author actually ends this entire introduction with this exact, wonderfully cheeky quote. Here are clear and detailed answers and interpretations to all these questions. Read them if you have the time and inclination. If not, just forget them, because it must be more important for you to just earn money. I mean, wow. It is such a sharp psychological hook. It totally dares you to reflect on your own priorities. Are you really too busy chasing a paycheck to understand the origins of the entire universe? It leaves us with this super provocative final thought. In the grand, sweeping scale of 20 parallel worlds and 36 dimensions, is making money really what you want to spend your mortal life doing? That is a question only you can answer. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and hey, keep questioning the universe.